welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Before we get to today's project, I wanted to say thank you so much for all of the wonderful birthday wishes, you guys. I so appreciate it. I'm officially 50, so half a century, and I still feel pretty good though, so that's a good thing. Anyway, I did kind of run out of time at the end of the week, and so all I got done for today's video was my little cabinet that I've been working on, but it turned out really cute. I can't wait to show it to you guys. I hope you enjoy the video, and without further ado, let's get to today's project. So this is a little cabinet that I recently picked up on Facebook Marketplace. It was very dirty and gross, and I hated the paint job. So the first thing I decided to do was go ahead and start sanding. And honestly, I had hoped when I sanded the top that I was going to find a wood top and be able to stain this back to a wood base. But unfortunately, I sanded and I did find some green paint underneath the brown. But once I got it down underneath the green paint, I realized that this was simply MDF. So this is a very inexpensive, cheapy little cabinet. And so I decided to just go ahead and sand off the irises that somebody had hand painted on the front of this and do a little cleaning with the sander. There were a few places where it was kind of chipped, and so I tried to sand those as smooth as possible and basically just clean up any areas that needed a little bit of sanding. I also sanded the inside of this thing. It was pretty nasty, and there were places that were gunky and had some things spilled on it that I wasn't sure what they were. So I just went ahead and gave the whole thing a really good sand. Then I used my big fat paintbrush that I like to use for sweeping to just get rid of all of that ugly sanding dust. And since the weather was actually pretty nice this day, I went ahead and left it outside while I sprayed it down with some crud cutter to get any other gunky residue and all of the dirt and debris and dust off of this thing. I gave it a really good wash, both inside and out, with the crud cutter. And then, as I like to do, I followed that up with some clean water to just make sure and get any of that crud cutter residue just rinsed off the piece. While I was there and I was cleaning and I had my big paintbrush out, I did go ahead and lay it on its back and swept away all of the ugly cobwebs and gunky stuff that was down on the base of this thing too. Once I had finally gotten this clean, it was on to painting. And I had already decided that I wanted to use a certain decoupage paper on the front panels of this. And I am painting it with a coordinating color. And this is Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Moody Blue. Now, if you've never used milk paint, there are a lot of tricks to kind of use it so that you get the finish that you want depending on the piece that you're painting. For slick surfaces like this, I would highly recommend using Extra Bond, and that is a gluey kind of substance that you actually add to your milk paint when you create it, when you mix it, and it makes it adhere really well to slicker surfaces. So it's 1 part paint to 1 part warm water. I use scalding hot water in my milk paint, honestly. Put your water in first, then dump your paint in. I use a little milk frother to mix my paint, and then it's half again as much of the Extra Bond, and you mix that in as well. And I use Extra Bond in every coat of paint I put on a piece of furniture if I don't want any chippy. So this actually took me 4 coats of paint just because I knew I wanted to give it a little bit of a sand once I was done. And I did not want any of that white showing through my paint. So I'm trying to be very careful to just knock the chunks off that sometimes milk paint leaves behind without actually doing any distressing. Once I was finished with this step, you guys, I decided I really didn't like the blue on the inside of this cabinet. It was just too much blue for me. So I decided to grab my DIY paint in the color White Swan, and I went over the back and the shelves in this with some White Swan. I did tape off the very front portion, and then I forgot to get any of the filming of me doing the bottom shelf. And then because I am going to be adding decoupage paper to the front panels, I very, very carefully added white paint to those panels as well. Once I had my base coat down, it was time to put on my decoupage paper. So I went ahead and measured the panels and cut out strips of decoupage paper just a little wider than the panels. Then I used my liquid patina from DIY, and I very carefully attached those pieces of decoupage paper. I'm so sorry I did not get any video of that. I don't know what happened. I swear I thought I hit the play button or record button, but apparently I did not. Anyway, once the decoupage paper was completely dry, I took some 150 grit sandpaper and very, very carefully went around the edges and sanded off the excess paper. Now, one thing I wish I would have done here before I actually put the decoupage paper on was I should have honestly sealed my White Swan paint with some either liquid patina or some Big Top, just because I did have a couple of small spots where I reactivated that White Swan paint and it leached just a little bit into the tissue paper. You can't really see it. I was able to wash most of it away, but in the future, I think I would definitely take the time to seal my white paint first. Lastly, it's time to seal this baby. And on the inside, since I did use White Swan, which is by DIY, and it's a clay-based paint, I did decide to go ahead and use clear wax over that to seal. I did 2 coats of the wax over the shelves and 1 coat on the back, just brushing that on and then wiping back the excess with my dry shop towel. Very simple procedure, and this will seal the paint, and once it's cured, it'll be a nice durable finish for those shelves. Then it was time to seal the milk paint, and my preference for sealing milk paint is almost always going to be oil wax. I like the way that it kind of sinks into the milk paint, and that once you wipe it off, it's pretty dry and it doesn't take very long for it to set up, and I just prefer it over the milk paint. So I'm using a chip brush and I'm giving this whole thing a good coat of the oil wax. And then I let it set for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then I came back with a dry shop towel and began wiping off all of the excess wax. This process takes a minute. And I like to go over my pieces 2 or 3 times with the dry towels just to make sure I've gotten all of that oil wax off of my piece. As a last step on this, to add a little bit of dimension and depth to these panel doors, I grabbed my DIY dark wax and I worked that in. I kind of thinned it out at first just to cover the majority of the blue paint. And then I worked more into the crevices and the corners. And I do this very slowly and meticulously, and I will go over it probably 3 or 4 times before I'm happy with my result, but I just keep adding a little bit of the dark wax, and then I will dab some of it back, and then I'll add a little bit more until I get the look that I'm going for. It's great because over the oil wax, it's super easy to remove. It just gives the paint a little bit more depth, and it adds kind of a little grunge factor to some of the corners and makes the shadows kind of more defined. And since I didn't do any distressing, this is a great alternative to that. So one of my favorite things to do if I'm not going to be doing a distressed look on a piece. Once I had finished the door panels, I did go over the rest of the piece with a little bit of dark wax as well, thinned with some mineral spirits, just to make sure that I had a nice cohesive finish on the entire piece. And here they are next to each other, one with the dark wax, one without. And I absolutely love how the dark wax just adds some shadows and a little bit of richness and texture and more of a vintage feel to this piece. What did you guys think of the little cabinet makeover? I am so sorry I missed the part of the actual decoupaging of the front. I feel like that was one of the most important parts of the entire process, and I don't know what happened there, you guys. I really don't. I swear I think I hit the record button and nothing happened. Anyway, I hope you liked it and I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit that little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then you guys probably noticed in the last shots of the cabinet that the one thing missing was a knob. So if you stay tuned for just a few more minutes, I'm going to show you some options for knobs that I have got, and I'm having a heck of a time deciding which one I want to use on the cabinet. So I took some pictures of each one of the knobs, and I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know which of them you prefer, and whichever one gets the most votes, that's the one that's going to go on the cabinet. So let me know in the comments below what your vote is. Anyway, I will see you guys back here on Friday. I am going to be working on some thrift flips in my kitchen, trying to work through some of my stash. So I hope you'll join me for that. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for being here. Bye.